The year was 2019. For over 2 decades, Pokemon trainers had grown accustomed to one golden rule. You could always bring your Pokemon with you. Then one summer day, that promise was broken. The fandom didn't just react, it erupted. Hashtags trended worldwide, creators made careers off the outrage, and a new word entered the Pokemon dictionary. This is the story of how a franchise built on catching 'em all faced the impossible truth that maybe you couldn't. This is the Dexit Controversy. You know, I envy those who have no idea what I'm talking about. Anyway, the story begins on February 27th of 2019, Pokemon Day. This was when Game Freak unveiled the first core game for the Nintendo Switch with Pokemon Sword and Shield. And it definitely looked like a Pokemon game. Bright colors, rounded designs, and if you stop and look hard enough, somewhat underwhelming graphics. I think coming off of the already simplified Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, both in style and gameplay, a good amount of fans were expecting the hire this man Nintendo level of graphics. In retrospect, and after actually playing Sword and Shield, I like the visual style they went with. It is one of my favorites, but in terms of the visual quality, anything aside from characters and Pokemon definitely doesn't look that great. Being on the Nintendo Switch and 2 years after it came out, there was a certain level of quality being imagined. Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey again weren't extreme as was usually the case with Nintendo, but they still look really good. Personally, I think it was because Pokemon had been on handheld consoles for so long and got really comfortable there. Sun and Moon looked very good on the 3DS. And while Sword and Shield were a step up from that, they were still a little goldfish in a giant bowl that hadn't grown yet, kinda like the fruit textures in Fire Emblem Three Houses. People who need to get their annual eye exam will say that it looks like a GameCube game and no. Though I will admit that it looks just fine at the best. I bring up the graphical debate because it would all be bundled together later on and for the moment it sets the groundwork. Sure, the scenes weren't amazing, but it looked like a fun game, right guys? For the first half of the year, it was all cool and good with various theories and leak discussion taking up the fandom space, until we finally made it to E3 on June 5th. The big showcase for video games that Nintendo would have a presence at, and this year, Pokemon Sword and Shield were their big ticket items. And the trailer they dropped for the games was honestly, in my opinion, one of the best ever released for Pokemon. With the presentation, the music, the pacing, the way they showed off proper diverse gameplay and some new features. If they had posted this trailer and said nothing else, they would have been in a great place. And then came the Treehouse livestream. This showed off the raw gameplay in a live setting with questions and answers from the developers, and ooh boy! So this gameplay is okay, but they decided to debut the wild area, allowing everyone to see the wide open space. Sounds like a good idea, though the truth is that things were very spaced out. Yeah, there was a lot of grass and Pokemon, but putting so much distance between them made things feel a little empty. Then there were the battles, which were okay. They got the point across and not much else, like the move animations were sometimes seemingly non-existent. We got to see a Dynamax battle when it decided to work, and lastly the actual graphics of the wild area were nothing to write home about. That is, unless you wanted to complain about the tree, and that is exactly what some people did. Yeah, it was only a tree with some poor textures, but to everybody disappointed with modern Pokemon, it became a symbol of everything wrong with the 3D era. Big day for your coworker who wanted to show you a video on their phone, and that's not even to mention the true reason we got here. During the segment, Junichi Masuda mentioned that not every Pokemon created up until that point would be available in Sword and Shield. In previous generations, you could always transfer up your Pokemon from older games into the new one. This time around, that would only apply to a select few. So in an attempt to give the whole controversy a name, upset fans chose to call it Dexit, a combination of the words Pokedex and Brexit, very smart and not at all dated. The hashtag Bring Back the National Dex was also thrown around here and there. That was a true breaking point for many people on the fence about this new Pokemon game, and understandably so. It didn't look the best, it didn't run the best, and on top of that, I couldn't bring my starter from Ruby version that I've had for 15 years. And that was basically the vibe that continued to follow Sword and Shield throughout the rest of the lead up to release. All these gripes too appear to be intertwined with each other. Because the backlash was so strong, the Pokemon Company released a statement saying the reason not all the previous Pokemon would be in the new games was because they were working hard to remake the models and create new high quality animations. Though from the trailers it didn't immediately come off that way, I think now with the later looks they meant it from the viewpoint of Pokemon Camp, and let's not forget all the new stuff they had to make, but I will say that they definitely did not handle it the best. There were so many better things they could have said and different ways they could have presented the game to make it not look There's not all that much more I can mention when it comes to a definitive timeline, because every new piece of information and trailer grew into a tug of war between the two halves of the schism. See guys, it actually looks good, you're complaining for nothing. Further proof of their incompetence. I can't believe they're charging $60 for this. Of course, I couldn't really tell you what happened from behind the scenes. From a YouTuber standpoint, I at least had a good time trying to talk about some of the lore, theories, and the Pokemon themselves, and I will admit I got a little too apologetic, cutting a lot of slack for games I honestly don't even think were worth all the uproar. Heck, there was even a little counter trend with the hashtag #ThankYouGameFreak, just as a way to show some appreciation. It was bundled along with this video from a Japanese website that you could generate to reflect your Pokemon journey up until that point, which was a cool idea. It was even like actually an official Pokemon thing. The video itself, not the hashtag. Maybe I shouldn't have posted it though, because that was some of the most hate I had gotten like ever for just trying to be a little positive, even if a bit naive. The big thing that actually happened was the release of Sword and Shield, and it was a game. Personally, I enjoyed it, and all things said and done, I like how Generation 8 went. The one gripe that remains about these games, because it's clear that graphics and limited Pokedexes are still a thing now in Generation 9, was of the story and characters, which were enjoyable, but following Sun and Moon, some of the better of a series in that department, the downgrade could be felt. In the years since then, there's been a good amount of love and appreciation for Sword and Shield, and even while they were out, Pokemon fans played them and had fun. Oddly enough, I think the general vibe of bring back the national dex has faded away, now becoming a general modern Pokemon bad sentiment. I know that it isn't all just blind hate, a good amount of it is, but there are valid complaints and concerns for this game in particular and the franchise as a whole. Looking back, it might be more on the cringy side to have lived in blissful ignorance. Heck yeah, make your voices heard if you're unhappy. But at the same time, I think it was really silly to believe that posting this image would actually change anything. The true winners were Game Freak selling millions of copies and people uploading monetized videos to feed off of it. By the way, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and hype up the video! Anyway, in terms of the actual Pokedex cutting, it is kind of a crazy move to pull. I almost feel like it was bound to happen, just that now of all times was the time. I think that Pokemon decided to keep up a tradition of a national dex and allowing transfers from previous games because the old consoles were so connected in terms of backwards compatibility in their hardware. Now on the Nintendo Switch, with the total number of creatures drawing closer to the 1,000, they decided to pull the plug. I'm not saying that it would be an impossible task, but it would be very hard with how frequently they put out new Pokemon games, and heck, if I was a developer, I certainly wouldn't. I mean, other monster collecting franchises won't even let you trade up your old creatures. Some would also not include every single one. I think in a world where we got less Pokemon every generation and fewer games so close to each other, they just might have. But even then, would they still want to? If we got a Pokemon game every 5 years with nothing else in between and each generation added like 50 new Pokemon, would they still keep the streak going? I don't necessarily defend it, but I get it. Though I'm not excited to live the rest of my life as a Pokemon fan hoping that my favorites make it into the newest entry. All I know is that Dexit showed Pokemon as a franchise was bigger than a promise, and if it could survive 2019, it could probably survive anything. Maybe. So let me know what you think in the comments about the history of the Dexit discussion and how you feel about Pokemon Sword and Shield all these years later. Also, tell me how many of your favorite Pokemon are in the current game of Scarlet and Violet, I'm curious. Maybe someday in the future I can make a video about how I've obtained peace as a Pokemon fan, but I tell ya, I definitely could have used it back then because I used to be a real whiny baby. Anyway, I've got to get back to preparing for the next Pokemon adventure. I'm sure it'll be totally free of controversy. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, including the Great Gators, Alex with Shiny Hunts, Justin Dows, Cosmo Zero, Tyler Hopper, KoiKoi13, Cemetery Hill, Cheez-It62, GatorKid509, TF, Mathaclock947, Taijirai, Justin R, Phantom, and Quago. If you would like to support, see your name here, get access to emotes, for comments, live streams, sometimes early videos, and our members podcast, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky as well for more memes. Anyway, this is GatorX, and I will catch you all later.
Here they come. Witness the grace and majesty in the Pokemon trading card game, Sword and Shield. Each booster pack of 10 cards sold separately. Cards vary by pack.